Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and last week I offhandedly mentioned Dragon Con trivia and how that might be relevant to an upcoming episode, and it is now relevant because, surprise, again, we have more guests. So, guests, would you like to introduce yourself since we have multiple of you this time?
You're just going to bring up Dragon Con trivia right off the bat where you're just going to immediately be like, I beat Alex at Star Wars trivia at Dragon Con.
No, what I said was Alex beat me at the written portion.
Well, that's nice.
I was second.
And then I tanked the actual panel portion.
You always do so well at the tests.
Mm-hmm.
You're like a good tester.
I test well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hi, I'm Alex Damon from Star Wars Explained.
And I'm Mollie. Hello.
Yes, I met the Damons for the first time at Dragon Con, and then the next day, Alex and I wound up on the trivia panel next to each other, which was, I still talk about that trivia panel to this day. Like, that's one of the most fun experiences I've had at a con ever.
Oh, she's an icon.
Yeah, I love that panel.
It was great. It was. And I get so, like, if I don't have adequate time to prepare for doing something on stage, like when I do my panels and things at conventions normally, I know like weeks in advance I'm going to do it. That one caught me off guard, but it was honestly like so fun. But I know in the past you've done that like trivia video on whatever question you missed.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
The Nikto question is how I feel about that.
You have to remind me what the Nikto question was.
So it was in the second round.
Which I did not make it to. So.
It was the one Star Wars Resistance question. They showed an image of the Nikto.
Oh, yeah.
The
with
gray
the
one?
Resistance design. Yeah, the gray one. And asked what alien this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Star Wars Resistance.
He sure does.
And blanked on that question.
Oh.
I was literally in the audience and I was sitting there going like, I even knew what it was and I don't even like Resistance or have ever really watched it all the way through. And I was like, I immediately recognized it. For some reason, I knew the name. Like I was like, oh, that's a Nikto. Like, I don't know why something in the deep recesses of my brain told me that. And I guess it was just the pressure got to him because it was so funny.
The question from round 2 I remember is the one where they showed an ocean planet. And I was racking my brain trying to remember Castellon because I was like, it's got to be. And then it was just Scarif. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would have been embarrassing if I were still up there.
The other one that got me was they showed like Outlaws had come out 5 days prior. Like it had come out and then 2 days later was day one of the con. They showed the ship from Outlaws.
Yep. Daniel loves to do that. He has asked a question before. Sometimes books will come out during Dragon Con weekend and he will ask questions about, like, he'll just open it up, find a trivia question and put it in there.
But normally it's like kind of a surface level question, but still, it is still from something that just came out.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be a real nerd to like, be like, oh yeah, I already finished the book. I already played the game. Like,
look, if it were a book, there would have been a good chance I'd already read it.
Yeah.
Like, I just downloaded Outlaws finally on my computer. I haven't gotten around to playing it yet, just because I do 18,000 things, and I really want to sit down and like marinate in that game because everyone tells me it's really good.
It's a good time. I need to finish. I've beat like the main story and I played the DLC, and I played the DLC significantly after finishing the main game, and I was like, man, this is a good time, and I need to go just like treasure hunt and spend some time in the world.
Yeah, I just want to go play Sabacc.
Sabacc's so much fun.
Wait, you can play Sabacc in that game?
Oh yeah, it's
A
like
lot.
their own special version of it.
oh, that's awesome.
And the rules are
Really?
really fun, and you throughout the game you can unlock and find new ways to cheat, and the cheating is a blast.
You can use Nyx, the little pet. He like helps you cheat under the table.
Oh my god.
He'll
That's
plant
so
cards
funny.
on people or like spy for you. It's super cool.
Where?
See, I've told myself, because I finally got Squadrons to work. I bought a new computer so I could play Dragon Age the Veilguard on the highest possible resolution. And Squadrons, which Bradley got for me a couple of years ago, didn't work on my old computer, but it works on the new one. So I told myself, if you get through the 10-hour campaign for Squadrons, you can play Outlaws. That's all I'm waiting for at this point. Alex, before we jump into the episode really quickly, in case people somehow aren't familiar with Star Wars Explained for some reason, Jason, can you tell our audience what that is, or Molly, either one of you, because both of you work on it?
Yeah. Well, I'll because we were talking about Dragon Con trivia, I kind of started the channel to help myself study for that competition because I had competed in it a couple years and I'd done all right, but I was like, I think I can win this. So I figured I would study and make videos about it, and I think it still took like 12 years for me to win one year of Dragon Con trivia. But yeah, we cover all the new Star Wars stuff that's coming out, the shows and the video games and the books and the comics, and of course the movies when and if we ever get more.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done
Uh-huh.
that.
Been a hot minute since we've had one. Although I think next
hmm
year, Mando and Grogu.
Fingers
Looks like
crossed.
Next
it.
year, I want to say. I'm having to get used to
2026,
that.
yeah.
2026. And then they're doing, I think they're doing it every 2 years, is what they're wanting to do.
I'm hopeful that we get something in 2027 for the 50th anniversary.
Mm.
Oh, you're right. I bet they're going to do a crate. I don't know if they'll do a movie and stuff. I'll bet you they're cooking up some stuff for the 50 year that we're probably going to learn about in 2 months when
Yeah.
we're in
Yeah,
Japan.
That's
I'm sure they'll do
right.
another big box set. They love doing those.
Are y'all
Oh,
doing
yeah.
Japan?
Yeah, the tentative plan is both of us are going to do Japan.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome.
So we'll
Booked
see.
and ready.
I'm very excited. I've never been to Japan.
I was gonna say, have you guys been over there before?
Never been.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
have not.
Same with us.
same.
Yeah,
I'm
it's gonna
like
be so fun.
nervous but so excited.
Oh, same. I'm like, I don't speak Japanese. I don't have any kind of concept of how to even communicate when I go there. But I'm like, I'm still gonna go and figure it out as I'm there.
We've been doing our little Duolingo every
Oh, really?
day,
I need to
which
start doing that.
I've some of it has sunk in, but I mean
Yeah, but
I'm like good at doing Duolingo, but that
right.
doesn't necessarily translate in having a conversation. So we'll see how that goes.
It's a little helpful, but I had to call one of our hotels and just like I wanted to confirm a reservation, and they answered the phone obviously in Japanese, and I felt immediately bad, like, "Hi,
Hello?
hello," and they were immediately like, "Oh, hi, how can we help?" Like
Right.
there wasn't much communication barrier.
I need to do that too. Yeah.
See, I just went and found myself a boyfriend who's already been to Japan and loves Japan
See, that's
and
the easy way out.
can do all of that for me because he's also a
Oh.
control freak.
I'll have to do
And-
that, I guess.
It'll be more comfortable.
I'm a control freak already. I just haven't been to Japan.
But you've never been to Japan, so I gotta go find a boyfriend who has been.
There you go.
I highly recommend doing that because then I could just be like, honey, so I'm gonna be there an extra day. Can you deal with the hotel, please, and ask if we can stay an extra day or figure out what our last night is gonna be because we were supposed to be there for like 4 days and now we're gonna be there for 5 due to complicated work shenanigans. And he'll be like, fine, I'll do it. But then he wants to be the one to do it.
Mhm.
Speaking of going to places that you have never been before that are slightly outside of your wheelhouse, what are we talking about today, Bradley?
Today we're talking about Skeleton Crew Episode 6, Zero Friends Again. Relationships fray under the pressures of a difficult journey. Alex, Molly, what is one thing you guys liked about this episode and one thing you think they could improve on?
Well,
Mm.
this was maybe my favorite episode of the whole series. It's between that and the finale. So my favorite part of the episode was Wim and KB and their discussion together. The title comes from Zero Friends Again. KB finally opening up and getting to know her. Wim saving her life, doing the Jedi thing that he always wanted to do without even realizing he was doing it. All that stuff. That was my favorite part.
Yeah, I love all the stuff between Wim and KB also. To pick something different than that, I will go with when they are all kind of like all the kids are working together on the ship to get out of there, and they all kind of like have their own specific roles that they're doing, and they're just working together so well. And to see that happen, like they've come so far at this point, and that moment is so fun with the ship kind of like shedding its outer layer, and the kids they can do all of this on their own and work together. That was a really beautiful moment.
I think for something I would improve upon, I would have maybe put a scene of the parents in there. I like that most of the episodes had like a cold open or just some little let's check in on the parents and what they're doing. And I like having that. I don't think the episode needed it, but it is something that I was like, I kind of wish we got to see Wendell and Farah.
Yeah, I remember hearing Bryce Dallas Howard talk a little bit more about this episode, and I think she mentioned that they had originally planned a lot more with the pirates and that there was going to be like a big dinner scene with us, finding out a little bit more about the pirates. I would have loved to have seen that and just gotten a little more context for what their relationships are all like. And like Jod's speech on the pirate ship is really, really great, but a little more time with the pirates would have been fun.
So one thing that I really liked after mine was quite shamelessly stolen by Mollie was I'm going to piggyback off of that and say the entire final 5 minutes of the episode was the most Star Warsy Star Wars.
Hmm.
Like everything about it, from the music to the direction to the situation to the dialogue, everything with it, to hitting the big red button.
Yeah.
Like this show has shown over and over and over again such an understanding of Star Wars and what makes it good and what makes it fun as a piece of kids media. And that scene just exemplifies it in the hands of such a talented director who has been spoiled, but it's Bryce Dallas Howard is the fucking awesome director of this episode. One thing I would improve upon after mine was shamelessly stolen by Alex was actually retroactive for the rest of the series. It's not this episode specifically. I wish we could have gotten a little more overt conflict between Fern and KB prior to this moment.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
If you watch the other episodes with as laser focused a lens as I have to, you'll pick up on it on the rewatch, but it kind of comes out of nowhere the first time you watch this episode. And it makes things like KB's lack of an introduction in episode 1, the lack of an emphasis on KB throughout subsequent episodes, it makes it make sense in retrospect, but I wish we'd gotten a little more of Fern kind of disregarding KB up to this.
I fully agree. That was the first like 5 episodes. I just kept saying, I just want a little more with KB.
Hmm.
And I understand that, yeah, she is really keeping her cards close to her chest. She doesn't want to rock the boat because she's afraid she'll have 0 friends again. But I think in episode 1, there could have been just a little bit more of them butting heads outside of KB being like, you don't have to be so mean to them. Like, she was more chastising Fern for being mean to the boys. But if there was just a little bit more of the two of them, yeah, butting heads, I think that could have helped.
Or the moment from the pilot that Fern made me do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where she does the voice and it turns out to be. We pointed out in our episode 1 coverage that KB's family is the only family that doesn't really get an introduction in episode 1. We get an introduction to Wendell. We get an introduction to Farah. We kind of get an introduction to Neil's family. Close enough.
At least they're dynamic, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you get it. KB's the only one. We don't even see her moms until episode 3.
I think
I
so,
think
yeah.
it's 3 that we see them.
Yeah.
They-
That's when we get the hint of like they're just worried about her. And that's when we find out that there's like something medically going on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all we get. Yeah.
I will say that I think that, because the other 3 kids, I would say their needs and their wants throughout the series are more focused on, like, Neil just wants to go back home because his family life is good. But Wim and Wendell and Fern and Farah have like this tension. And so I was kind of expecting KB's tension to also be with her family. So I was kind of like looking in the wrong place. And yeah, I missed a lot of the stuff between her and Fern. And that's where the tension was for KB.
Yeah, we were thinking that she was going to have like helicopter moms.
But they actually seem really great. Like when we
Yeah.
do really get to spend time with them in episode 8, they're like not concerned for KB.
They seem
They're like,
perfectly reasonable.
you're gonna fix that ship. You'll be
she's like,
fine.
she's got this.
Pirates are here. Yeah, we'll stay in the house. You got this, baby. Like her moms seem great.
I actually love that, Alex, you brought up the screenwriting concept of want versus need. We'll actually put a pin in that because I want to come back to that later on in this episode because this one's a big one for Wim in terms of what Wim wants versus what Wim needs. And that'll go into the finale. Bradley, one thing you liked and one thing you could improve upon.
So I'm trying to keep it somewhat different because I know we all love KB. But I will say the one thing I did love about this episode, because I think she's my favorite kid out of all of them. Like, I don't know why. why I think that she might be my favorite. KB is just the coolest, most interesting character to me. So I think I just love that she got her. I think I love how like Neil got his episode, and then KB got her episode. Because they're kind of like the best friends, so they kind of needed their
Hmm.
own development episode. Because Wim and Fern are essentially the lead kids, right? So they're getting the whole season, so they don't necessarily need their own individual episodes. But I love KB and all of her stuff. The one thing I would improve upon, I didn't realize this. I was on TikTok and I came across Tippett Studio is the name of the company, and they did the Queen Crab in this episode. I didn't realize it was stop motion. So this is classic stop motion animation, which I did not realize because I think this is
Queen
what I
crab
would
has a
improve.
name, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's the
Well,
trash crab name?
the trash crab's name is, I'm not fucking kidding, tetanus. As
Okay.
in tetanus.
That's
As in the animators kept poking their hands on the model crab, and so they named it
Oh,
tetanus.
that's funny. Okay. Well, so with Queen Tetanus, I this is what I would improve upon because I didn't know it was stop motion animation because I think the problem is they put this filter of CGI on it to kind of clean it up. And
Mm,
that's not necessarily a bad. I didn't think the crab looked bad at all. I just thought it was CGI and I
yeah.
didn't think it was stop motion animation. But when you like if I watch that video of the studio making it, I'm like, that is so impressive and looks so cool in stop motion. Why are we not seeing? I'd rather see the rawness of it a little bit more, just because I think I think that's the one thing I love whenever Star Wars does when we can see puppets, when we can
Mhm.
see like stuff like that. Like it makes it more authentic Star Wars, and that's what I love that they did it. So that's authentic, but I didn't know. And if it's not immediately apparent, then it just that you might as well have just done CGI at that point because then,
Mm.
I don't know, but it looks really cool in the video. I mean, you wouldn't even notice the difference really. I think they just add a filter or something to make it kind of like fit in the scene a little bit better. But other than that, that's my only real kind of small improvement to the episode.
It's not your most nitpicky nitpick, but it's definitely in the top 10.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's definitely in the top 10 you've done on this show.
Well, when the episode's this good,
I know. I
it's
was
like
just
Right.
saying.
No,
It's
I have to come
hard.
up with some
Yeah.
random little thing that bothered me, honestly.
There's a reason we had to change because we tried to do it. Normally, it's the thing you like and the thing you didn't like. We tried to do it in episode 1. Like we really struggled. And we were like, we got to change this. None of our fucking guests are going to be able to pull this off. We can't even pull off finding a thing we dislike. Bradley, you want to take us into the episode so we can keep this moving along?
In our first scene, after falling down the trapdoor, the kids are spit out at the base of a snow mountain. Neil notices that KB is not moving, and Fern explains that sometimes her cybernetic augmentations break down. Meanwhile, Jod exits a manhole covered with treasure. He asks the hotelier to prepare for his departure. However, Jod finds himself being held at gunpoint by Gunter, who orders that he be taken prisoner. SM-33 exits through the manhole to help Jod, but is shot by the pirate. Several New Republic X-Wings arrive, which begin attacking the pirate ships, and the pirates flee with Jod and SM-33.
Alex, maybe you can help me out with this because I was rewatching the episode for my notes. And when the first scene came up, I went, is this are they using the same shots from Empire Strikes Back?
it
for this
definitely
scene?
has some of that vibe. I think that they were going more with the Goonies.
Okay.
There's another like slide sequence with all those kids going down and getting shot out into they land in water, not snow, but I think that they were probably trying to evoke the Empire Strikes Back as well.
Yeah, because there's a particular shot that reminded me. It's where they come down and they kind of turn to the left. And it reminded me so much of the shot with Luke. There's another similar shot of Luke in Empire Strikes Back where he kind of comes down and to the left. But this one's much more frantic and much more panicked, which I liked a lot.
And Bryce hasn't been like shy about saying that she has put in homages to not just other Star Wars movies, but like Apollo 13 in her season 2 Mandalorian episode. There's basically a shot for shot kind of remake of Apollo 13's re-entry.
Gosh, I wonder why. My only other note for this sequence is that I just need more Pocket.
Yeah. Alex, you loved Pocket.
I really loved Pocket. She was my favorite Glup from this series.
I love
Like
that for you.
the second she showed up, I was like, that like it just felt like a fully formed character, and she had said like one word. And I was
Yeah.
like, I know
100%.
everything I need to know about you, and I love you.
Her look was so Star Wars, and it just worked so well.
And Kelly MacDonald's acting as well.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
absolutely leaning into this show has really been like a treasure trove for people who love scoundrels.
Hmm.
I really hope that she pops up in The Mandalorian and Grogu or something other Mandoverse, because it seems like such a waste of Kelly MacDonald if she's in a few scenes in 2 episodes. So I hope that she pops up as a bounty hunter again.
Yeah. And I like that they had her pretty much on the same level with Jod because he's like this larger than life kind of character. And when she comes in, she's immediately like, oh, it's you. And we see them kind of like tussle back and forth a little
He
bit.
seems genuinely scared, like,
Yeah.
uh-oh, not her.
Yeah. I like that.
I want them to do like a Fennec Shand and Pocket team up, like
Ooh.
if even if it's just in like a comic
Ooh.
setting or something. But I still want. I mean, I want obviously I want Ming-Na Wen to like be on screen with her, like that would be fantastic. But I think just those two characters. I love female bounty hunters. I love female Star Wars characters in general. But Fennec Shand is one of my tops, and I love that she would just. I think she would just do so well. I love anything where you could do like a team up of some kind of like we have this similar like career path. So like let's just throw them in and just be like best friends. Like I need that. And I need that power and that energy in a Star Wars.
Hold on, I have
Yeah.
a pitch for you. I have a pitch for you, Bradley.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you ready? All right, so you team up Fennec Shand,
Hmm.
Pocket,
Uh-huh.
and you know who else is a bounty hunter? Asajj Ventress.
Yep. I knew you were gonna say that. Yep.
Yep, you team these three up.
You got the Charlie's Angels right there.
Oh my God, that would be
Exactly.
so good.
Would
Now
be
you say
good.
that. Like
Mhm.
that would be the premise though. It would literally be Charlie's Angels. Like you just
Hmm.
have the three of them form this special team, and then you have your, voice or whoever to be the the guy who gives them the stuff to do. Come on, that's the next animated show. Like what
It's
are we
Imbo
doing
for
here?
some fucking reason.
Like what are we
Imbo's
doing?
here.
I
love
like
that.
Hondo for that actually.
Mm.
The fact that they
Stop.
would
Oh,
even
that's perfect.
Yes.
like consider taking direction from him. That
Oh
would
my
be so
gosh.
silly.
You're speaking
Hondo
my
tells them to
language.
do something, and then they just do the complete opposite of that.
Shove him in a locker and keep going.
Yeah.
I love that idea. So we do have finally. Okay, so guys, this is kind of an
Okay.
inside joke with me and Charles. So we have been every single episode avoiding talking about this actor because what I try to do is whenever we introduce a new character, we try to introduce the actor and try to be like, okay, this is what they've done and stuff. So I publicly apologize to Jaleel White for not mentioning him up until this point. We've really been trying to find the best place to introduce Gunter because he's literally in every single episode except for the episode where they go to Ad Akron. Like he's in every single episode of this show, and we haven't introduced him as an actor yet. And I was like trying to find the best moment to bring him up, but it's just this is the time, I guess.
Bradley,
So
who is playing Gunter?
Jaleel White is playing Gunter, best known for his role as Steve Urkel in the sitcom Family Matters. He was also the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in multiple 90s iterations of the animated Sonic shows. He's appeared in supporting roles in the film Dreamgirls, and he was also on television on Boston Legal, House, Castle, Psych, Bones, and many more.
So every TV show that I watched when I was in high school.
Yep, there you go. That's Jaleel.
I was a
All right.
big Family Matters fan back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Good old
love Family Matters.
TGIF.
And he wasn't even supposed to be a main character on that show.
Mhm.
Like they
Right.
just eventually people loved him so much they were just like, let's just make him a regular.
Even
Just
my
an
parents,
instant fan favorite.
watching Skeleton Crew, they were like, Urkel's in this?
Right? It's something like when the trailer came out and I noticed it in the trailer because I think I texted Charles and I was
You
like,
texted me immediately. I was going to say, you sent
I
me a
said,
text. I was like, you're not going to
what
believe
is
who's in
Jaleel
this.
doing here? Like I was like, what the heck? I was like, what is he randomly doing here? And I love that he's playing this kind of like essentially alternate first mate because he's like, the new first mate after obviously the line of succession changes. But I just find that like to Brutus or whatever. I love that he's kind of like second in command. But I love Gunter. I love Jaleel. I think he's a great addition to the Star Wars canon.
I wonder if Jaleel gets tired of people calling him Urkel or if he just has embraced it by now, because I'm sure he gets that a lot.
I'm sure he gets tired. I mean, I guess he would, but it's also kind of the same thing like for Daniel Radcliffe. I'm sure people call him Harry Potter all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's just some roles you can't escape. And I guess if it's so iconic, like I don't know if I think I'd be annoyed about it like at first, but I think after a couple of years, you're gonna have
Yeah.
to just deal with it after a while, right?
Yeah, or
Sure.
or if you're Elijah Wood and you keep getting called Daniel Radcliffe all the time.
I think that's worse because then you're getting mistaken for somebody else. It'd be one thing if you were like, "Oh, is that Frodo or whatever?" But then it's another thing if like you're like, "No, I wasn't in that movie at all. That wasn't me."
The only scene from this one that like really stuck out to me was they had this like it's a shot that gets overused I think now in a lot of action movies, and it's a very like Avengers shot where when the X-Wings are coming in, the camera kind of like pans around the group of pirates. And I was just like, okay, that shot has been way overused. I mean, it's fun to see in Star Wars, but I don't know. That one shot stuck out to me of being like, okay, well, everyone uses this shot. Let's get on with it. That can be my nitpick.
There you
There
go.
we
No,
go.
Yeah,
There
that's
we
a
go.
That's one thing we do all the
found
time.
another nitpick.
Yeah, we always love
Trying
to any good show you can nitpick. That's fine. I think
Yeah.
it's good to nitpick because then it's like I'm just being like appreciative of the fact that I love it so much that we can just do a little bit more, just a little bit more.
Listen,
Yeah.
two things can exist simultaneously. You can have a piece of media that you dearly love, but you can also nitpick the hell out of it. And these two things don't have to be separate entities.
Right.
You are allowed to find faults in things that you love. See our entire Acolyte coverage for me doing just this.
In the next scene, below, the children watch as the X-Wings pursuing the pirate ships. They realize the X-Wings have been the good guys all along. After failing to get their attention from the ground, Fern comes up with a plan to climb the cliff to get to their ship. However, KB thinks that this is impossible. They are interrupted by trash crabs. Neil and Fern don't trust the crabs and think that they should just climb back up to the ship. However, Wim disagrees and KB decides to follow Wim. The two pairs walk in opposite directions.
I just want to read my note on this section verbatim, and then we can talk broadly about the KB and Fern sequence. Quote, "The ability to speak does not make trash crabs intelligent," end quote. I just love that Wim immediately sees these trash crabs as like, they're trying to help us. They are talking. And I'm like, Wim, buddy, no.
I love that he's like, they're natives. Obviously, they know what's going on.
Obviously.
I mean,
They
I
would
thought
never.
I was like on Wim's side for this whole little adventure because it's a very Clone Wars thing, just or Star Wars Rebels. Just, nature is always trying to help the good guys. So I was like, yeah, listen to the crabs. He's probably right.
It also reminded me a bit of, and this was actually a trivia fact on IMDb as well, that they're kind of reminiscent of the Noti from
Mhm.
Ahsoka, to where they're also little native crab species that helps people out. Although Wim clearly has not seen the episode of Clone Wars. I cannot remember the name of the junk planet. It is not the one I'm going to talk about in a minute, where Savage Opress gets help from the little snake guy who's hanging
Yeah.
out there, and that turns out to be a bad idea.
No, I guess they're more like this is what I didn't catch this until I rewatched the episode, but I was like, they're more like parrots. Like they're just repeating. Like I don't think they actually know what they're saying necessarily. They might have some kind of level of intelligence because clearly they're able to bring food to the queen, kind of essentially.
Mhm.
But I don't know if they're just something in their biology or whatever is able to just mimic what people say. So that's why it's like they're just saying follow, like, whatever. Like
I wonder if it's a very similar thing, yeah, that they're just repeating back with
Mhm.
some sort of vocalizer or some sort of voice box. I forget the Star Warsy word for it.
Yeah, something they picked up along the way of like, we figured out how to do this to survive.
That was the sense I got that some of the crabs just happen to have, we see a stormtrooper helmet on one, so they're droid parts. So I think some of them have the ability to like speak through these speakers.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree, Bradley. I think they're just parrots that are
Yeah.
like, we know tetanus needs food, so we're gonna just lure people over there.
Also,
that seems
3PO's
good.
leg, according to IMDb,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
a golden leg that looks a lot like 3PO's.
I was gonna say you can't
I
say
didn't
that's his
see it.
actual leg because
It's not
come
his actual.
on.
Look, it might be. He's got a silver one throughout all of the original series, which
Right.
when I was a kid, I had that I'm going to make a bunch of action figure collectors so mad with what the story I'm about to tell. When I was a kid, I got to see 3PO as part of a box set. And I didn't realize as a kid he's supposed to have one silver leg. I thought they had like misdone it or something. So I got gold paint and painted his leg to match I still have the figure. It's in one of our boxes in storage. If I'd remembered, I would have grabbed it, but I actually painted his leg gold because I didn't realize it was supposed to be silver.
I love that
Was
so
that the
much.
Power of the Force line?
It was in a box set with Owen, Lars,
Oh, interesting.
and one other figure that I don't remember.
Huh.
It wasn't R5 because I remember I got that separately. I'll remember the second we're done recording.
Yeah.
The second we're done recording and I'm walking up to the coffee shop, it's going to hit me halfway there.
So did you think that that was just a mistake that the leg
Yeah.
was silver?
Yeah, I just thought that the action figure line had made a mistake.
I love that so
And
much.
so I
You're
took
like,
it
my
upon
action
my.
figure
Star
didn't
Wars
get
kid
painted.
thing to do.
Oh man, they messed it up. I
Like,
gotta
I can
go in
fix
and fix
Right.
it.
You're gonna fix it yourself.
I have rejected your canon and substituted it with my own. This was even before I got into the expanded universe, so I didn't even have really a concept of canon. I thought everything was canon. Let's talk. I didn't take any notes for it because I wanted to leave it open, but what are thoughts broadly on the KB and Fern argument?
I agree with what you were saying earlier that it did kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. Like I feel like we weren't really shown this tension until now. And I was happy to see it. Like I was like, oh, okay, good. Finally, we're seeing where some of this tension is coming from. But yeah, it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere a little bit, but I was glad for it.
I agree that I think that maybe they could have built up to it a little bit more, showed them arguing, or showed there is one shot in episode 5 where Fern tells KB to turn SM-33 on, and KB looks at Fern because it's like that's a dangerous thing for me to do.
Hmm.
So there are little moments, but yeah, I was surprised to see KB kind of like just unleash it all on Fern. But that's what happens when you bottle it all up.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is kind of the realistic. From a storytelling perspective, it kind of comes out of nowhere. From a realism perspective, I thought that was completely accurate to where if
Hmm.
you're the type of person who's constantly shoving things down and shoving things down and shoving things down, they do all just bubble up
Yeah.
at one point. And I think that is what happened. Why KB picked this exact moment, particularly because we find out like later in the episode, very shortly, because it's only like a 28-minute episode, that she could have died if she had tried to climb the ladder.
She definitely would have because her cybernetics shut down again when she was
Yep.
just walking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that was super dangerous. And she had like Wim there to do an immediate response. Like, even if she hadn't fallen, even if they had been like on a ledge or something halfway up, if that had happened, there would have been no like dirt. There would have been no droid parts around to be able to fix it. Like, and I do love it's frustrating to watch as a viewer, but I think in a good way. The fact that because KB is so scared of communicating this out loud, she's not able to do it effectively.
Mm.
I do love that she's not able to bring this across. It doesn't feel like a misunderstanding in the cliche way to me.
Yeah. I do like that later in the episode when Fern is like realizing what's happening, and we do know that Fern knows what KB has to do in that situation, and that kind of adds another layer to it. So like Fern knows what could happen with KB, and she's still like pushing her into climbing and doing all this stuff, and that kind of helps it sink in a little more.
In the next scene, Brutus pronounces Jod guilty and sentences him to death by airlock. While the other pirates cheer, the pirate Chalet reminds them of equal time in the pirates' code. Jod gives a speech promising them wealth and power. He claims that he can lead them to Takranid's treasure on Ad Atten, and Brutus reluctantly spares Jod's life, but warns his former captain that if his information turns out to be false, he will be thrown out the airlock.
Bradley, did you want to talk about actors in this scene before we
I sure
dive
did.
into
So
it?
this is another reason why we kind of held off on the Gunter actor thing is because I was like, you know what? I might as well also talk about all the other pirates in this episode too. So I got 3 pirates here that I want to talk about. I think I'm pronouncing that character's name right. It's Chalet or Chalette. I don't know. I don't know if they say it in the episode, but on Wikipedia it says Chalette. I don't know. Anyway, so she is being played by
No one is listening to us because we know how to pronounce Star Wars names
Right.
correctly, Bradley. Absolutely. I will
no.
leave that up to to certain people who make lore videos on YouTube to tell me how to
There
pronounce
you go.
things
Do the
correctly.
pronunciation.
I'll go watch the Star Wars Explained video on it later.
Yeah, when you break
Whatever
down
we
all the
say,
pirates, right?
whatever we say, there'll be 100 comments telling us that we're wrong.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's
pronouncing it wrong.
It's always just our best guess, and we just say it confidently.
yeah.
Yep, that's how you got to do it.
Especially when you talk about books, especially if you're as big of a fan of the High Republic as I am, and you get all these new names and places, and then you go to talk to people about them in real life, and they're like, oh, it's actually pronounced this. Or you listen to the audiobook and you're like, seriously? Seriously? You're pronouncing it Marchion? It's Markion.
It's Markion. I agree.
It's Markion. I will get into knockdown, drag out arguments over it's Markion. I don't care how Mark Thompson pronounces it in Light of the Jedi. He fixes it later.
He does.
Sorry, Bradley.
I've only read that book, so I can only go based on what I've heard on that Audible version.
Yep.
So
we've deliberately
unfortunately
been
for you
keeping
guys-
Bradley away from the High Republic for certain reasons that I will reveal soon.
No.
So Pirate Shalette or Chalet is being played by Dale Souls. She's best known for her role as Frida Berlin in Orange is the New Black.
Oh, that's where I know her from.
Exactly. And so that's why I was like, when I watched this episode, I was like, she looks so familiar. I was like, I know I've seen her somewhere. And she was in Orange is the New Black for like 5 or 6 seasons. Next up, we have John Hodgman, who's playing the character called Snobbius Snee, who is the kind of person giving the ruling or whatever. He's a
I'm sorry, what was
Keterian.
that name again?
Snobbius Snee.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's very Star Wars.
Fucking
It's the
Star
most
Wars
Star
names.
Wars that you can get. And that is a Keterian species, which first appeared in The Last Jedi. So that's, if that helps you figure out who I'm talking about.
It does. And so did that opera singer in the first
Yeah.
pirate scene. I
There you
didn't
go.
even mention.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, we didn't
Wonderful
bring her up.
opera singer from The Last Jedi.
John Hodgman is best known for his personification of a PC, in contrast to Justin Long's personification of a Mac in Apple's Get a Mac advertising campaign. So there's a deep cut for you, what he's known for. If you
I hate
remember
that
those
I know what you're
commercials.
talking about.
I know, that's a deep cut. He's also been a contributor on Comedy Central's The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and he has what we're gonna call a begrudging Disney trifecta. So you guys, I don't know if you know this, but we on our show, any actor who's appeared in a Marvel, a Disney, and a Star Wars has a Disney trifecta, is what we call it. Whether that's voice acting or physically appeared in any of those things. So I give him a begrudgingly one because one of his things is a podcast kind of radio show. So he's done a voice on Disney's new version of DuckTales. So that's his Disney thing.
Okay.
Then he's also done a voice on Marvel's Squirrel Girl, the Unbeatable radio show.
I'm going to give that one to him.
I'll have
It's
to
a
give it to
fictional
him.
voice role. I'm going to give that to
I
him.
know. So
Yeah.
it's some kind of thing. But normally we've reserved the Disney trifecta for TV show or movie usually, but we'll give
I'm
it to
going
him.
to begrudgingly give this one to him. Yeah.
And then our last pirate is the pirate Kona, who's played by Sissa Gray. She's a Samoan actress known for Smilf and DC's Legends of Tomorrow and Bosch. Those are all
I
the
loved
different-
her like armor and her like whole design. It's really cool.
Yeah, so she's really cool. And those are our pirates.
I do love how piratey this scene is.
Mhm.
It's
I mean,
very
that's-
piratey.
That's just they talk about death by airlock, which is just walking the plank.
Mhm.
There's a fucking sea shanty that Jod sings, which is apparently, again from IMDb, the same tune as the theme of the show.
Oh, I did not catch
Ah.
that.
I
did
also
not
did
catch
not
that.
catch that. It's the pirate theme of the show, I think.
Okay.
Huh.
I only looked at it when I was checking something else and noticed that trivia fact and went, "Are you fucking serious, Skeleton Crew?"
I do remember, I think Bryce Dallas Howard said, or there was an interview somewhere that originally Jod was just going to be saying those lines, and then Jude Law decided to sing them a little bit.
I love
Was
that.
like, yeah, let's make this a sea shanty.
Yeah, let's do it. I love when actors do that. Like they just kind of take the initiative. But I also
Yeah.
my only critique of it is I wish it was catchier. Like I wanted
Yeah.
it to be like something where I'd be like singing it the next day. Like, you
It,
know.
it does sound like they made it up on the spot. And it
Yeah.
would have been fun if we got a full-on Star Wars sea shanty out of this that fans would want to sing.
Really
I
commit
would-
to it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I would absolutely sing the shit out of a Star Wars sea shanty. And Andy, who was our guest on episode 3 from Force Friends Rewatch, probably could correct me if I'm wrong on this. But sea shanties are supposed to be quick to pick up, catchy, repetitive, because there's something to sing while you're working as a crew on the ship to keep
Mhm.
morale up. And I do love that they have sea shanties in Star Wars. Now, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense with spaceships given the way they are, but I also think about like this is where my Tolkien brain comes in. I'm also thinking about the role of song in a world, and Star Wars doesn't explore that super often. We get references to it, like the Wayseeker who becomes a pop star on Alderaan, but very rarely do they ever explore like the role of song and music in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't get much about just entertainment in general in Star Wars.
That is true. Yeah, we get holodrama, like references to holodramas and things, but we've never actually seen one. I would kill to read a Jedi Harlequin romance novel that I know exists in the Star Wars universe. I know they exist.
You know, this was a missed opportunity, I think, like when you're talking about we don't get a lot of hollows or entertainment stuff in Star Wars. It's a missed opportunity that we had suburbs and we don't have like Neil's mom watching like a daily soap opera or
Yeah,
something on the hollow. Like
Space
how
opera.
space like how come they didn't do that? That would have been so funny. Like to watch this like really dramatic, like fake like show where like I don't know, something silly,
I
like
agree.
where the Greedo species is making out with someone and then like I don't know, then their evil twin walks in and that would be a funny like Greedo Beto kind of callback. I don't
They're
know.
called Rhodians, Bradley. I actually fucking know that one. Speaking of Jude Law, I just have to bring this up. There are certain moments in productions, particularly in theater, like when you get like a really good Shakespearean like monologue and you hand it to an actor and an actor is just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna absolutely go all in on this one. This was Jude Law's moment because this was such a like theater speech moment
Yeah.
that he does, where it's just all his gravitas and all his skill as an actor in this moment. It's actually incredible to watch him act in this scene.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that they gave him so much space to deliver this speech. Like there were a lot of like moments of pause that I feel like in a show like this where you're trying to keep the episodes pretty tight, 25, 35 minutes. I'm glad that Bryce Dallas Howard fought to give him a lot of space for this one.
My final trivia note on this, and it's from the trivia guide for this episode. I don't know why it's here because the screenshot on it is from the last episode, but I'm glad the StarWars.com trivia guide included it because I actually didn't know this. Quote, the pirate legend named Renaud is a nod to the late directing legend Richard Donner, so it's Donner spelled backwards,
Mhm.
who helmed such movies as Superman, The Omen, and perhaps most importantly to this series, The Goonies.
Oh, cool.
I did not know that, but there that is.
Back on Lanupa, KB slumps on the ground, her corroded augments preventing movement. Fern and Neil climb the mountain hull, but Neil struggles. While Wim repairs her augment, KB reveals her weakness and disability, explaining Fern's impatience. Wim invites them to be friends. KB creates a mold in the sand, and Wim melts wires and pours molten metal into it, replacing the microfuse. KB's head goes limp, but the lights blink back on. She rises and surviving a near system shutdown. She thanks him for saving her life, and they continue to follow the trash crabs.
So my thought, I had to sneak a Legends thing in here somewhere. I had to, and this was the moment where something reminded me of Legends. There's just one shot of the trash, like the big piles of trash with everything is dumping, and it reminded me so much of a planet called Raxus Prime, which I remembered from the Clone Wars video game that came out 5 minutes after Attack of the Clones. Alex, I don't know if you or Molly know. Do you remember what video game I'm talking about? I know Bradley doesn't. Do you remember what game I'm talking about?
Not really. I
I
don't
don't.
recall that.
It was like 5 minutes after the movie came out, and it was like this kind of vehicle control game. Like it had this extended campaign, but you were always controlling like a Republic tank or somebody on a stap or something, and you would go through these early missions It's like one of our first mentions, I think, of the planet Thule, which is the
Mm.
big dark side, one of the big dark side planets. I remember it because I played so much of it, because it was one of the first things to come out after Attack of the Clones did. But Raxus Prime is from that. Alex, you pointed out Raxus Prime also appeared in another piece of Star Wars
Uh-huh.
media that may be more familiar to listeners of this show.
Yeah, it was also in The Force Unleashed. It's still a junkyard planet that you have to fight your way through.
Yep. It's also in The Force Unleashed. I will say it was nice to see it show up because the minute, Alex, you told me that, I was like, oh, yeah, it was where you fight that one. It's
It's
Rex
like,
Terrell's species.
yeah, the Alina that like builds his own junkyard Jedi temple.
Yeah. God. Force Unleashed, I will give it this. Force Unleashed had some cool ass concepts for missions.
The characters and the villains you fought were fun. They were interesting and over the top.
I do like that they keep killing Shock T.
Yeah.
That was yet another instance of them killing Shock T.
Poor Shakti.
Poor Shock T dies like 4 times in Legends. Like they couldn't decide. I think they came down on the Force Unleashed version was the canonical one. But
It's Anakin killing her in the Jedi temple during
okay.
his attack is the canon version.
Oh yeah, the canon. For Legends, I think they settled on Force
Oh,
Unleashed.
yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. It's the most notable, most
Yeah.
prominent one.
It's also if you're not watching the deleted scenes and things like that, it's the most like clearly on screen one.
Mm.
But this just reminded me of Raxus Prime, and I felt like I needed to bring up the Clone Wars video game because I am who I am as a person. I do want to talk about there's a moment where Fern and Neil are climbing, and Neil very directly says to Fern, not everyone can do things the same ways as you can. And Fern has this moment that leads me to believe no one has ever said this to her before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think KB has been overly open about it because she's afraid that Fern would leave her behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which she does say later on in this section, like the whole idea of Fern was kind of her only friend, and it seems like her first one. Like it doesn't seem like she's such a kid who seems like she never had any friends even before the accident, which makes sense because she's very into like her specific technical interests and very specifically like building things and constructing things. Strikes me as somebody who's very much a loner even before this accident happened, which is really fucking tragic and also kind of brilliant how they got this across so subtly.
Mm. Yeah, I wonder like when her accident happened and what she was like before versus now, if she had always been kind of that way or if that was something that kind of developed after the accident.
Yeah, like the cybernetics definitely help her understand and remember things, but she may have, or maybe she always had a photographic memory. Maybe she was
Yeah.
always like that, and I'm giving the cybernetics too much credit.
Yeah.
I had the same thought when I watched the episode for the first time because I was like, yeah, no, obviously she recorded the things in the cybernetics. And then I thought about it for a minute and I went, actually, it seems more like she's just remembering it because she's already demonstrated in the show she has a really good head for memorizing very specific technical details,
Mm-hmm.
which again makes sense. That's her like really, really big area of interest is in technical stuff. I also like the contrast because KB is scared of being left behind because she can't keep up with Fern. I like it contrast with Fern feeling responsible to keep everyone moving.
Mm.
Like their argument earlier on gets interrupted by Wim and Neil, and Fern has to go over and basically play babysitter for the younger kids.
Yeah.
And I like that that's really apparent, like when they're separated, Fern is really pushing for Neil to keep moving because she feels like I have to get to the ship. I have to save everyone. I love that it's not just that Fern is a jerk. There's understandable reasons within the context of the narrative why Fern wants to keep them moving.
Mm-hmm.
I love, yeah, their tension, their argument doesn't come from a place of Fern being bad inherently. I think she wants to treat her friend the same, whether or not she had the accident, which I think is a good impulse, but it's not accepting the reality of the situation that, no, if I climb up there, I will probably die. And I'm glad you think that, like, you can do anything you set your mind to. It's like, well, yeah, but there are limits.
Mm.
No, I really can't. Like, I will die if I climb this ladder. No, I absolutely love that was something that the show addressed, I thought, in a really, really well thought out way. I think that in episode 1, you see KB cybernetics, and it's like, oh, cool. She has the visor from Knights of the Old Republic. That's a neat little like twist on things. And then as the show goes on, you find out why she has those cybernetics and like the role that they play, not only in the plot, which is one thing, but in her character. Like it's a visual cue even early on. We think of cybernetics in Star Wars, and I don't think we think of them, we just think of them as part of the world. We think of them as having your iPhone glued to your head. Whereas if you look at like a character like Lobot, the cybernetics are so much a part of who that character is, especially in the comics and like defining his relationship with Lando. I did also want to mention the want versus need, Alex, you brought up right at the very beginning. And Wim spending this whole show wanting so much to be his idea of what a Jedi should be, but needing to learn just how to help people, how to be attentive, how to listen, how to do things for others, like actual Jedi stuff. I loved that that was the lesson he ultimately had to learn, and it came to a head in this scene.
Yes.
And that KB was the one to kind of like make him realize that.
And to specifically, she knew it too and called him a Jedi. And I was like, that was so cute. Like the two of them together, that was adorable. I also like every time Wim tells KB that she can be his friend and Neil's friend, and she just smiles back at him. Like that makes me tear up every single time. It's just so like, and again, Wim doesn't even know he's saying something so profound and exactly what she needs to hear.
Yeah, it's really, Wim took away more lessons about the Jedi than he thought he did, because one of the core tenets of the Jedi Order is selflessness and like thinking about others. And when you're doing it right, it does manifest as this very empathetic, like listening to the needs of other people. KB needs friends. And more importantly, she needs to know that other people have her back, especially since she's disabled. That's a concern for her. So knowing that there's more people besides Fern that she can rely on, and Wim's so earnest, you know he means it.
There was one part that I wanted to bring up, going back to Fern and Neil climbing, that I really, really love. I love how Neil constantly kind of like subverts the audience expectations when he's yelling about Fern having the weird body type and not him, like saying that she has the weirdly long arms and legs.
Yeah.
And like the audience were like, she's the normal looking one,
Like, she's
and
the normal
Neil's
person.
the weird one. But he's like, no, you're weird and I can't do this and it's
You've
fine.
got those
like
weird human limbs.
yeah. I love Neil so much that I was glad that he pointed that out.
It goes back to those aliens in episode 2, where they turn up on the planet and they're like, oh my goodness, there are these weird aliens. And I'm like, no, that's just the Star Wars galaxy. You're actually the weird one. We've never seen you before.
What's also like they go, oh my gosh, aliens. And I'm like, Neil's right there. Like but to him, he's not an alien.
Yeah, I guess that's so. Whatever species lives on Atten to them is just the regular, that's the people who live there. They're not aliens because we know what they all look like. We've seen them our whole lives. So anytime they went, when they went to Port Borgo, they were just like, holy crap, look at all the aliens here.
Yeah, and we think of Star Wars so human centric. I think because a lot of the main movies and stuff, most of the TV shows, in fact, I can't think of a single thing that doesn't have the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is the only piece of Star Wars visual media that I can think of with a non-human protagonist. So at the least, even if there are like a bunch of aliens in a story, generally we're following a human. And I love that Neil is here and subverting a lot of that. Like, no, the humans are kind of the weird ones. We do have long, spindly arms. Now I'm trying to think if there's another. No, it's just the Clone Wars that I can think of, at least as far as visual media.
Maybe it's about time we get a new story from a new perspective.
Yeah, where's
I don't think like Ahsoka doesn't count. Like, I mean, I think she's obviously
I'm counting Ahsoka.
I know, but I'm saying like if we need like a visual media where like the protagonist is straight up a different thing that's not humanoid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it needs to be something that doesn't like Ahsoka looks like, Rosario Dawson is still a human under there. Like we know there's a human underneath that cowl. Like we need something where it's like they look like Neil. Like Neil needs to be the main character essentially, right? Like it needs to be something like that where it's like, no, that's an elephant boy. That's not a human.
That reminds me of Alex's mom asking him if that was Ahsoka's hat Or was that
What?
part of her head?
The Montrall. She was
That's
like, "Is that a
so true.
hat?
That's
Is that a fun
that's
That is
so
hat?
A
real.
fancy
amazing.
hat?
Well, because
Or
she has that
Sunday
little
hat?"
crown thing, so it does kind of make it look like it's a hat. And then when she takes it off when she sleeps in that one episode or whatever, that was
So weird.
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
In the last scene, the smaller trash crabs lead the children to a giant trash crab, which wants to eat them. Fern and Neil jump onto one of the trash scouts carrying their ship, and Wim uses his walkie-talkie to call Neil and Fern for help. Fern sees Wim and KB and lowers the ship. They jump on top. The giant trash crab hurls a boulder at one of the trash scouts, causing them to crash. Wim thanks them for the save. Fern apologizes to KB, and they hug. They then hear a scrapper barge approaching the downed ship. They enter the ship and try to prevent the scrapper barge from destroying it. As the scrapper begins devouring the onyx cinder, Fern activates the emergency hull demolition sequencer. This causes the ship to break out of its thicker armored hull, revealing a sleeker design. They are able to escape and fly off into space.
I have to point out, just piggybacking from the last section, as much as we give KB credit, because this is KB's episode, Fern also devises a way for Neil to get up the ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That she takes Neil's comment to heart immediately and starts looking for a way to get Neil up.
Mhm.
And it actually works really well. I did love that KB doesn't have to learn to, I think, change any behaviors in this episode. She more has to learn to be more vocal about her needs. But the nice thing about Fern is that she also, once someone has vocalized a need to her, immediately looks for a way to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Because it was not malicious with Fern. It wasn't she was deliberately ignoring KB. It's just she didn't know. She didn't think of it.
And if anyone is going to be vocal about their needs, it's Neil. And we love him for that.
Neil's going to be vocal about everything. Every opinion that boy has, he says out loud. Neil's going to have a very successful podcast one day.
That
Yeah.
reminds me, I mean, one of my favorite lines of this episode is, "We're getting pretty good at falling."
Oh, yeah.
I love Neil so much.
Me too. I think
He's the
he's
best.
Aceless.
he might be my favorite.
He's one of the best characters to come out of Star Wars in a while. Like, original characters to come out of Star Wars in a while. I love it.
I need Neil to just show up in random Star Wars stories just to do commentary.
Yeah. And like Robert Timothy Smith does such a good job.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were talking about, I think it was episode 1, we were talking about like either episode 1 or episode 4, the whole team that built Neil just didn't, everybody brought their A game with him. You forget he's an alien.
Yeah.
Yep.
You forget he's not really, it's like that thing with the Muppets where Kermit's an actual talking frog. I feel like Neil is an actual talking blue elephant boy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also love the repeated motif of Wim not knowing who the good guys in any given
Why
situation
am I
are.
always wrong about who the good guys are? Yeah, that's a good line too.
I love that repeated motif because we think of Star Wars externally so much as a good guys versus bad guys story because that's how it feels on the outside. It's easy to forget that if you're living in that, it is kind of hard to tell at points.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a kid who's never left your home planet. I also, speaking of actors, we have to shout out, I just have to shout out the actors who are playing Fern and KB, which are Ryan Kira Armstrong and Kiriana Crater. Just this final scene has me in tears every time I watch it, where they reconcile.
Yeah.
She's like, "You're my best friend."
All of the kids coming back together, and like Wim is so quick to go from like argumentative with Fern to like, "That was amazing." He's like, I
Yeah.
love the way he bounces back and forth with her.
They have a really wonderful dynamic. I was kind of hoping it didn't happen, but they made a point of saying that Fern doesn't have a dad and Wim doesn't have a mom. I was kind of hoping that their parents would get together at the end and they would become actual like step siblings. I thought
You never
they
know.
kind of
Season
had a,
2, like,
Yeah, save that for
Yeah.
season
parent
2, I
trap
think.
them together. Like, come on.
Parent Trap.
Here's the thing. We'll talk about this when we get to the retrospective that we're going to do when we're done. I don't know if the show needs a season 2, but I'm also not opposed to the show having a season 2.
It's one of those
Yeah.
things where you're like, it was so good, like don't ruin a good thing kind of thing. But it's also kind of like you want more because it was so good. So it's such a difficult decision, and I'm sure they're not taking it lightly.
Yeah, it feels complete enough to me, but I would absolutely watch more.
with everything that happened with Fern's mom and Wendell, that can just be our headcanon
Yeah.
going
I'm
forward,
with
you
you on
know?
that. Yeah, for sure. I believe that they now that they have like gone through something traumatic together, like
Yeah.
they're really like bonded by this now. And then they're like, "Do you want to go for a drink later?" Like, kind of thing. Like now that
Do you
this
want a
is all
microwave
over,
He,
like,
meal?
yeah, I was gonna say he brings her over for a nice
Oh my
hot
God.
home
hot
cooked meal.
microwave meal, right? Dehydrated meal.
Yeah.
Listen, what is being a Star Wars fan if not replacing the canon with your own head canons and pointedly insisting that that's what happened?
Yeah. It's
100%.
not hurting anyone.
It's
No.
not.
And if they never explicitly say anything, then you can believe whatever the hell you want,
Hmm.
honestly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So,
If they
True.
don't
And
ever contradict it,
right.
until proven otherwise, I can
That's
think
right.
this.
That's the way I do most of our Star Wars theories is
that
that
is in fact
if I don't see a body, you know what?
that is in fact what he
Absolutely
does.
that person can come back whenever they want to. Like they're not
Bradley
dead.
Bradley will come up with some fucking off the wall insane theory and I'll
Every
be
time.
like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And he's like, "Well, you can't disprove it."
Uh,
And I'm like,
That's right.
"You are right. I cannot explicitly disprove that this did not happen. So I gotta give that to you."
Yep.
Molly, you brought up in the very early section just all of the kids like working together
hmm.
in this final sequence with the sort of mobile millipede trash compactor thing. I wanted to point out with regards to that they're also using the skills that they've learned over the course of the show. KB goes to the engine, which is where she went in episode 1. Wim goes to the gun, and Neil is flying the ship, which they learned how to do in episode 3. So they're
Yeah.
also using, we saw them figure out how to fly the ship. We don't question they know how to fly the ship. We
Right.
saw them learn how to do it.
I also like that Fern is the one that, well, two things with Fern. There's a great shot of KB like getting the ship ready, and Fern just has a big smile on her face, like watching her friend do that, where KB talks about how there are some things she can't do, but there are also some things that only she can do.
Hmm.
So I love that they kind of give that a little moment. But as far as the ship escaping, I think it's great that Fern is the one that has to push the button, that she kept telling Wim, like, don't touch that, don't touch that. And I thought Wim would eventually get to touch it when they would be in a situation like this. And it's like, okay, someone has to do it and Wim will get to do it. But I think it's better that Fern has to do it and kind of like take a leap of faith. I don't know what this is going to do, but I have to be a little bit like Wim and just go for it.
Yeah.
I love when you have two characters that start out as polar opposites and start to kind of meet in the middle. Because we didn't even really talk about like the degree to which Wim has to be responsible for KB when she's shutting
Yep.
down. And he kind of has to take over the Fern role in that moment. And you're right. Yeah, with Fern kind of taking the Wim role here of being like, you know what? There's a big red button and I'm going to push it.
Yeah, which was such a fun reveal. Like we all knew it was kind of a Chekhov's gun that that button was going to come back into play at some point, the way it was referred to, and I'm so glad that this is what it did.
And
Just
yeah,
like
we didn't like
blows off
know.
all the armor.
It sounded like
I
such
was
an
shocked.
ominous thing, and it was confusing enough when SM33 described it. We're like, we don't really know what this is going to do, but yeah, the reveal of the sleeker ship coming out of its pirate, like as all the kids are losing their baggage, the ship gets to lose its pirate baggage and become
Yeah.
like its
Oh.
true
We're all
form.
we're all coming out of our shells here.
Yeah.
I did not even realize that's what was going on, but you're
That's
so
crazy
right.
that that's the symbolism because all I could think was, oh, they're just trying to sell another toy here. They're just trying to sell a second Lego set. Like,
Yeah, we've got
Honestly,
that.
though,
yeah, did you buy the Onyx Cinder Lego set? Just
Yeah, Molly
kidding,
got it
there's
for
gonna
me
be
for
another
Christmas.
one.
Yeah.
I would buy another one if they did
I'm sure
the sleek
I know.
version.
I mean, they got it. They're gonna have to do it at some point. I mean,
I
like
want
it'll be
to.
like the deluxe version, I guess, of it. Like, it'll actually literally fit in and out of its shell. They'll come up
Yeah,
with
that would
some
be
way to
cool.
do it, I'm sure.
If the UCS version does that, like I'd be all for it.
I
Mhm.
think they'll do it.
I'm just thinking about how the original Ghost and Phantom Legos fit together.
Hmm.
To
Yeah.
where I don't know if the Ahsoka ones do that because we don't really have a lot of room for Star Wars Legos because I've been collecting them since 1999. And so I have not gotten any of the newer ones, but I'm thinking about how the original Ghost that I do have with the Phantom that I do have, they fit together. but they're separate sets. I can see the fucking Lego company do this.
Yeah.
To where they're like, we're re-releasing the Skeleton Crew, the Onyx Sender outside, but then separately you could pay us another $80 to get the inside ship. I was most worried the whole time because I was watching it like crunch through the hole. I was like, oh, their ship's gonna get destroyed.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
ship is
Star
gonna
Wars
get
loves to
destroyed.
destroy the hero ship now every
Yep.
single time. So I
That-
thought this was another Razor Crest situation, and I was like, God damn it!
I
Like,
was absolutely gobsmacked that the Millennium Falcon survived Rise of Skywalker. I
That
thought for
was
sure that ship was a goner.
which Toy Story is it that they have that moment where they're all like,
Toy Story 3.
3.
yeah, it was a very Toy Story 3
Oh,
kind of
100%.
moment where they're all just like slowly going into this hot, weird, crunching thing.
The fucking millipede.
Hey, that was creepy.
That's such a weird. It's so weird the way it moves.
Mhm.
It's kind of crab-like, kind of insect-like. I love when Star Wars is weird, don't get me wrong, but then there's also points where I watch Star Wars be weird and I was like, we could have done with a little different kind of weird here. This is uncomfortable for me personally because of the way this thing moves.
Yeah, does have a lot of legs.
I liked it.
It has so many legs. Why does it need that many legs? Nothing needs more than maybe 4 legs. If you have more than 4 legs, that is an excessive amount of legs. Darth Maul.
Yeah, we're looking at you.
Why
Darth
did
Maul.
you need that many legs, Darth Maul? My final note for this section, for this episode as a whole, is I didn't catch it until I watched this with the subtitles on. So I always watch it the first time with the subtitles off, and then when I do my notes, I watch it with the subtitles on. When calling Claimsies on the new ship,
Yeah.
the minute they're flying away, note perfect.
Yeah.
10 out of 10, no notes.
Well, it's such a good joke and also a reminder to the audience of Claimsies and that idea because it comes up in the very next episode.
Mhm.
And which that is such a wonderful callback that SM33 is like, yeah, close enough.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
So it was good. It was a good button on the episode, but also they were like, we should probably bring this back up.
The way that this show is constructed is so interesting to me because a lot of streaming shows, it's not this obvious the way that they're set up as broad overarching narratives. A lot of the ones that I've seen, either the episodes don't break down that well, so it's clearly one long thing that they chopped up into 6 bits, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, or you get something that's really more episodic and doesn't have much of an overarching plot until you get to the end, which is a little more like Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. This one did such a good job of feeling episodic, but also continuously bringing these things up throughout the show that would eventually pay off at the end. There's very few things they set up over the course of this entire show that do not pay off in some way by the end of the show, which is absolutely brilliant writing, just in terms of how they knew where they were going and they knew both the experience. This might be the first show I've said it can work either as a weekly episodic watch or a bingeable show. I don't think we've ever had a streaming show that has done that before, not just in Star Wars. I can't think of a single one that I would say works both as a week-to-week watch and a binge that was made specifically for streaming. Skeleton Crew is incredibly written.
I still think it tends to skew towards long movie, but it found a better balance than some of the, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, I agree. That was just very much arbitrarily chopped up. I kind of felt that in Skeleton Crew for the first 3 episodes, but once we hit 4 and beyond, I was like, nah, okay, I understand this more now. I think it was just, it took me a while to like, I wanted the whole crew together, and that didn't really happen until episode 3. So that part to me felt like it took the first, like, it did take the first third of the series to get done.
Yeah, I do think it was good that they released episodes 1 and 2 together. And Bradley, I think we talked about this when we did episode 2, that you kind of needed to get to the Jod scene where he first makes his appearance. I don't know if it would have worked if it was all included as one episode. I do I feel conflicted about episodes 2 and 3. Those are the only ones where I'm like, I get why we broke here, but this feels weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially given the rest of the show is chopped up so well.
Hmm.
Even this one, episode 6, and the last one, episode 5, which take place on the same planet, feel like two distinct episodes because we're on different biomes in the same planet. Like the first one's the luxury and the Goonies pirate cave. The second one is the trash heap. That felt segmented. The pirates, it just felt like we were still on that same planet in episode 3, which was the only moment that I was like, I don't know if we could have done this a little bit differently. We talked about this in that episode, Bradley, too, where how Kim feels like a completely different episode.
Yes,
This
that's
just in the
I was
back
gonna.
half.
I kind of think that episode 2 could have been all of Port Borgo, but then that would have made episode 3 incredibly short.
Right.
And
There's
so,
not much you could have added to it.
yeah.
That's what we
Bradley,
said.
you
We were
said
like, you can't really add to it, but it's its own thing. Like you can't necessarily shoehorn it in. And I don't know what I think we came up with a solution, or maybe there was a mini solution of just like
you
adding
attempted to
more.
come up with a solution, and I
Yeah.
disagreed with it.
Oh, my solution was to add to the Kim storyline to like make it its own episode. I was like, give Kim to give them a side quest to do on the moon so that like it felt more of like its own complete episode rather
Yeah.
than just the ending of another kind of bit. But
Actually, I just figured out a solution
okay, what
to
is
that
it?
episode. Don't tell the audience that Kim is in contact with the New Republic. Have them show up and have the episode be trying to figure this Kim person out, because the kids are introduced to Kim as an ally of Jod, or an old ally of Jod. And Jod tells the kids right at the beginning, don't trust Kim. But we know, because the show told us the first time we ever saw her, she's calling the New Republic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
If they had made the central mystery of the episode Kim herself and the kids exploring this area and trying to figure it out and maybe getting more into the galaxy, like there's one throwaway line about them learning about Alderaan
Yeah.
and then being like, oh, you missed this. If there was a little more of that, I think you could have made that one work as its own standalone episode.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed just hearing Kim tell a few more stories, or like she had all those cool like books and maps, and she could have gone into a little bit more lore of not necessarily Ad-Atten, because I don't think anyone really knows much about that, but maybe more about the pirates or something else. She had a lot of potential.
I just thought about it. We could probably have done something a little bit more like Kim could have told them the story of how she met Jod, or we could have gotten a backstory of how, like a flashback or something, right? Of their story together of some kind, just to pad out the episode a little bit, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be more than 5 minutes long, but it's just something else to do, like, or something else to like show us, like maybe Jod gives his perspective of the story first, and then when we meet Kim, she gives us the real story and
Mhm.
then the real aspect of it. So we go in distrusting her up until the point where Kim gives us the real information. And then you're like, oh shit, Jod's been lying this whole time. Like he's
Right.
obviously a bad dude, which they figure out anyway in the end, but it would just make that reveal of the ending a little bit more like make more sense. Does that,
I also
Yeah.
love unreliable narrators anyway, and like getting conflicting versions of the same story. And I love the Rashomon sequences in The Last Jedi.
Mhm.
I think those are so interesting to watch and try to figure out like which one's the real version. We never really get a definitive real version. And we also, that would work really well too with Pocket in the last episode, episode 5. Pocket coming in with her own version of her story with Jod.
Yeah, we're learning about all of Jod's other names and all of his potentially like other personalities that he's had across the galaxy with all these different people, which is
I
a
think
lot of
that
fun.
that would have made this series, I think, better is if we would have gotten all these secondary characters would have given us their version of Jod. That would have made not that his character is not good, but I think that if Kim gave her version of what Jod was like, and then Pocket gave her version of what Jod was like, they gave their stories of how they met him and stuff, then maybe we would have got that would have padded out a lot of these episodes, and I think that people would have preferred that actually, because then they would have been a little bit more than 30 minutes. And then that way you get like these fun little flashbacks, because I think that's one of the things that they didn't do with Jod, unfortunately. I think we're going to talk about it more in the end because they
We
cut out that
will.
one
I've
scene.
been been saving it. I have the thing we fucked up with regards to that, but I have kind of been saving it for episode 8.
Okay. Yeah, with the flashback and everything.
With the flashback, and we mentioned something that I was provided a primary source that is not correct. So that's a tease for our episode 8. Is we're going to talk about the thing Charles and Bradley fucked up. That's an actual segment on the show, by the way. The thing Charles fucked up. Like, I might have done pretty well at trivia, but don't get it twisted, listeners. I'm still constantly fucking up things on the show that I have to apologize for.
That's part of the job.
Yeah.
That's part of the job.
I wanted to point out, I really like that idea of having flashbacks of different versions of Jod adventures and having them be like these larger than life, kind of overacted, over the top scenes. Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
Why am I just imagining the Ant-Man scenes?
Yeah, something like that.
That would be exactly. So funny.
Yeah.
Even in that same cadence of like he's telling the story and then we're seeing it, but it's like you said, a little bit over dramatic, like a little bit overacted, and it's just because he's retelling it in this fantastical way. And we know that like Star Wars is fantastical, but like obviously if it were in that capacity, it wouldn't be that weird or that interesting all the time. So, or he could tell it and then they'd interrupt him as he's talking, and then like the action would stop on screen while he's being interrupted, kind of stuff like that. That would be interesting.
Let's go ahead and move on to I did not forget this. I'm going to remember to cue into this. I did not switch this sentence halfway through and am now monologuing to cover it up because I genuinely did forget to ask this when I started the sentence. But now at the end of it, I have made it to Bradley, who is the director and writer of this episode. Wow, that was all one sentence, by the way. That was all one
sentence, wasn't it?
That's the joy of people. Look, people tell me, like, why are your dialogue tags so long in the stuff that you write? And I'm like, because people talk like that. Because I talk like that. You run on those sentences, baby. Who directed and wrote this episode?
So we have the same writer as last week. It is Myung John Westner. That shows she came
Myung
back.
Joe Westner.
Joe,
Your fucking autocorrect.
God, every time
needs to fix this.
I know. I did that.
Double check your goddamn notes, Bradley.
She is coming back to write again. So she did both episodes, which makes sense. They're kind of sister episodes anyway. And then we did kind of spoil in the beginning. This was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who everybody knows, did episodes of The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett. But yes, she is very prolific in Star Wars. And we were talking a little bit last week. I may have cut it out of the main episode, but we were talking about why has Bryce Dallas Howard not been given just a movie, a Star Wars?
I think you left it in.
Oh, did I? Okay.
I think you left it in.
What do you guys think? Where is her movie at this point?
Yeah, I think she really, this is such a vague sentence and I kind of hate using it, but she gets Star Wars. And I do think she would make a fantastic Star Wars movie. And I hope it happens one day. I think she's earned it at this point, but maybe she doesn't want to. I don't know. Like, I would love to get her thoughts on it. Maybe she prefers telling just in an episodic way versus having a whole film.
I would love to see her team up with her dad.
Yeah.
To a duo
movie. She's a fucking fantastic director on her own, and maybe she primarily directs the episode, but also maybe she gets her dad in as like the second unit director or something.
That's such a power play. I love that.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Dad,
Alex, go ahead.
Oh, Ron Howard, you're second in command.
Yeah, you're second.
You're second. Sorry, Alex, what were you saying?
I'm kind of surprised. Maybe they did approach her for The Mandalorian and Grogu when they were going to do that as a film, because I feel like she has done so much in the Mandoverse that if there were going to be another movie in between Mando and Grogu and the Dave Filoni film, just get her to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to hear her talk about it. I can't remember if anyone's ever asked her.
I don't think anyone ever has.
I don't think anyone's directly asked.
No one's ever been like, why haven't you done it? I mean, obviously we know why, because they just haven't come up with the concept or whatever. It's just not the right fit yet, or there's not like a thing a project on the table that either she believes works, or that, there's not that many projects. I mean, even though there's a bunch of stuff in the wind, like that we know about or that has existed in the past, I don't think that there's anything tangible like that much, really. I don't think there's like a million they don't have 12 movies sitting in Kathleen Kennedy's desk drawer, like that
they
are just
might
chilling. But
they've said that like for every project we see, there are multiple projects that we have no idea about.
Yeah.
And they're
That is,
definitely not
It
all
would
bangers.
Right. Yeah, I think that's
that
the
is
problem.
true.
I think she probably has read a few scripts, I'm sure, but there's nothing that she's been like, hell yeah, this is the one. Like I got to do this project. She seems to me like the kind of person, like the director, who would be like, I only make stuff that I think is like 100%. Like I am all on board 100%. It works for me. And I
Yeah.
think that's what she's like.
Alrighty, well, Alex and Molly, since you are our guests, we'll let you go first. Final thoughts on this episode.
Again, one of my favorites of the series. It's still kind of a toss-up between this one and the finale as to which one I like more. But once we hit 4 and 5, I was like, okay, I'm like really getting into this series more. And then 6 was the one where like every criticism and nitpick I had previously, I feel like it was addressed and addressed in a very emotional way. So I loved it.
Yeah, just this episode is I don't like ranking them, but I think this would be probably like my top three of the series. And I did, part of me was kind of mad that it took this long to get really into KB's character and her story, that it took till episode 6. But the way it played out and the way Bryce Dallas Howard kind of like directed this whole episode, where it's not just a KB centric episode. It's, everyone has good conclusions in this. It just worked really well. And it was a big turning point episode for like all of their relationships, and the ship coming out of it. Basically, we got a brand new ship out of this episode, which was really cool. So yeah, everything in it worked really well for me.
Bradley, your final thoughts on this episode?
My final thoughts are I agree with everything you said. I think that this is the culmination of all the characters' arcs, really, like their character moments. And, Wim got his hero moment. Essentially, he didn't get the one he thought he was gonna get, essentially. But he became a hero, essentially, in this moment. Fern realized that, she can't be super controlling all the time. And then, KB got her moment to shine as well. And I think that everybody kind of got their little moments that make sense for their characters. And, we hate on this show, we hate talking about certain things that are standards in writing and movies and TV shows. And this is definitely that, kind of all is lost moment, but then we all kind of come back together at the end. You kind of get over the hump. We're at the hump of of the story, basically. And now we get to go into the final kind of adventure part of the story, where all the things that we've done worked up to this point. The next part is really, I mean, honestly, the next two episodes are kind of like a duo finale. I know they're not really, but they kind of are. I know the Jod moment at the end of the next episode is kind of like the peak, but where he finds the gold or whatever. But I think this is like truly like the moment for at least the kids in the show. This is their peak. And so I love how they did that. And I love that Bryce was the one that got to pull it out of them.
I don't know what you mean. I hate talking about storytelling. It's not like I have a whole degree in it that I paid way too much money to acquire, and then I bring it up constantly. You may get tired when I talk about it, but I'm actually not going to for my final thought. I'm just going to reiterate that if you're an actor, watch this episode, because every scene, every performance that every actor is turning in this episode is note perfect. From the kids to Jod to Gunter to the little alien that's whispering in Brutus's ear and just having a ball with it, to like the pirates when Jod speaks to them. Like each pirate had their own backstory, apparently, that we never got in the show. And watching how that informs the choices the actors make and how they respond to Jod is such an impressive masterclass in acting, and how there's no small roles. You can do a lot with a little bit of screen time or even under heavy prosthetics. It's such an impressive episode from an acting point of view as well as a writing point of view. Alex and Molly, we mentioned it up at the top of the show. Where can people find you if they want to see more of your Star Wars content / what do you want to promote, where people can go support you?
Our YouTube channel is Star Wars Explained, and we are doing a lot more on Patreon this year. So we do have a Patreon, but our primary channel and outlet is YouTube.
Yeah, we're on all the socials, Star Wars Explained, TikTok, Instagram, all the fun places.
Alrighty. You can find a whole host of reality TV shows that Bradley has worked in the production offices for, including such shows as Married to Medicine, The Circle on Netflix, Queen's Court, Temptation Island, which just about to have a new season starting on Netflix, or has started a new season on Netflix. I don't know. I don't care. If you like reality TV, please watch these shows. It helps keep Bradley employed. You can find me at a whole fucking host of places. You can find me as a cast member on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice. You can find a whole bunch of queer books that I write. You can follow my socials at CWRogers6. If you are interested in those, I post updates all the time. You can also find me involved in Legends Expo, which is a fan-run Star Wars EU convention out in Burbank, September 13th and 14th of this year. You can find out more information and acquire tickets at legends-expo.com. Alex and Mollie, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. This was an absolute blast. I loved this episode, and I'm glad y'all were able to come on and talk about it, because I know, Alex, when I contacted you about doing this, you were pretty immediate you wanted this one.
Oh, yeah. I knew which one. And thank you for having Hilo on as well. You've been hearing our dog
Hello,
occasionally
Hilo.
throughout.
I love it.
We love the occasional pet moment coming in. My cat is currently behind 2 locked doors. And I will still be able to hear him. The microphone won't, but I'll still be able to hear him.
Yeah, Hilo loved this episode as well, so he just needed to get his thoughts in.
Those are some very, very deep thoughts there, Hilo. All right. Well, thank you again so much for coming. And Bradley, if you would run our pre-recorded socials. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. Because fucking hell!
What's that? Seashells by the seashore?
Seashells. I have plastic in my mouth. I cannot say these things.